set the intention for our practice today. All right. This is a relatively new sentiment of metta painting that I did. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I take little art paper and I doodle on it, and then I write sentiments of loving kindness on the back. I recently was doing some spring cleaning and I found this art pad just covered with my kids' scribbles. And so I took some of the pages and I painted over them and kept my kids' scribbles on them. And I just love that. This one reads, "May my respect for boundaries in myself and others increase. May my respect for boundaries in myself and others increase." That's actually a really great sentiment of metta to begin this practice today with something that happened at the farm where I live this morning. And it's a great segue into this beautiful practice. I don't know about you, but cultivating boundaries, what we call in the Satyaseva practice, balaklohe. And we have somebody in Dublin today. And what those two words, bala and klohe, those two words, stone and wall, are the ideal image for a healthy, wide open, beautiful boundary. And it is most definitely inspired by the idyllic scenery of Ireland, which is my ancestral place, and it is where my soul comes alive for sure. And one of the things about the balaklohe, one of the things about creating boundaries for myself and framing my life as something sacred is I feel really in charge of it. I feel this sense of agency over it. Except that when I encounter the boundary of someone else, I occasionally feel a little affronted, like, whoa, where's that coming from? Yee. And I get all insecure. And that happened this morning, wouldn't you know? So I was yapping at my husband, who was very focused on his computer, and I was just yapping at him. And he turned to me and he looked at me very seriously and he said, with really no affection, it was just absolute seriousness. He said, I need some space. Oh my God. Suddenly this flood of what did I do wrong? Uh-oh. All of this came to me just instantaneously. And I thought, wow, look at that. Would you look at that? That's one of the instruments of peace that we practice here. Julia, darling, this may have nothing to do with you. How about let's play this has nothing to do with you? How about this is your husband's boundary that he needs you to gently go away so that he can have some space to do whatever it is that's stressing him out. So I just decided, wow, look at that. Look at what an opportunity I have here. I get to respect his boundary by not throwing over and spilling over and irping over all of my insecurities. Nice. So I did. I gave him space. Or I honored the space that he requested. And then about an hour later, he came to me and said, hey, I'm sorry if that was rude. And then explain the situation. All good. Boundaries are places of understanding. And when we hold boundaries with people, it is because we are in relationship to them. And when we are in relationship to someone, it seems to me at the most fundamental level that we want to have mutual understanding with them, right? And in order to have mutual understanding with the people in our lives, we have to cultivate healthy boundaries. And healthy boundaries are based on mutual respect and trust. So that's the sentiment of kindness for our practice today. And we get to frame our lives in this practice, in this time that we get to be together. I want to welcome you all to Sate Seva, which is 16 mindfulness practices, looking at how we can better support ourselves and each other on the journey of recovering ourselves from any kind of negative habit energy that may be plaguing the mind and heart. Negative habit energy is universal, friends. It has many faces. For some people, it shows up in the misuse of drugs and alcohol. For some people, it's a negative and confusing relationship to food. For other people, it is all kinds of habit energy associated with thought and so on. Mindfulness, present time awareness is such a wonderful way. It's a useful tool of really looking at how is habit energy appearing in my life. For several weeks, we have been exploring the second chapter in the Sate Seva book. This is the book we use. And we have been exploring chapter 2, the cultivation of openness, the mindfulness practice of openness. And if you're reading along, we're on page 54, and I'd like to share with you an idea, a concept, a practice that is really far out, okay? And I want you to know this ahead of time. And I want you to see in your own mind and heart how open or closed you are to these notions of mine. And if you're closed to them, don't harbor any feelings like you're doing something wrong. Being open or being closed is simply information about where you are today or in this moment. And that's okay. That's honest. One of the things that I want to share with you in preface to this reading is that sometimes people come to these practices in moments of crisis, and that's not a bad thing. Where we go awry is when things suddenly start getting better and then we stop practicing. We stop coming to meetings, we stop reading, because why? Everything's going well. We don't need it, right? It's my experience that when I come to practices, when I read, when I engage with practices, when things are going really well, is when I discover the nuances of my own mind and heart. It's when I discover all the little subtle clues to my activity and my reactivity that later, when I'm in crisis, throw me off kilter. So these are practices that I'm going to share with you to do when things are going well. All right, so we're on page 54 if you're reading along, and we're doing a practice called non-dominant hands. Not everyone likes surprises, which is difficult because life tosses many of them our way. That's why it is important to practice creating quirky and awkward situations that help reduce the unsettling feelings common to being surprised or upended. Please practice this only when you feel a sense of ease and playfulness. Otherwise, it could feel like one more task to do and complete. Brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Thank you for the smiles. I know it's weird, right? Stay with me. I know it sounds silly. I promise you will have all kinds of reactions and thoughts. Your brain might feel as if it is on fire. This happens because you likely have little to no muscle memory for using your non-dominant hand when brushing your teeth. It feels awkward and weird. You may feel uncoordinated and disconnected from your body. It might even feel unpleasant. Exactly. Stay with it. That's what we're going for. Be open to it. Be uncomfortable. Remember, you are safe. You are just brushing your teeth with your other hand. It feels strange. Take a moment to acknowledge that. Be honest with yourself. Can you be curious and observe your body? Now, before we go into the practice of inquiry, I want to insert a couple of thoughts here. Why this is so important to bring forward, why intentionally creating the conditions for awkwardness, for wobbliness, for discomfort is to help you meet yourself where you are when the conditions of your life that create awkwardness and discomfort are not in your control. That's the key. So we're creating, by brushing your teeth with your opposite hand, you are creating an intentional situation that you can control. And you get to experience in your body and your mind what's happening with something really ridiculous and mundane. And that makes an impression, that leaves an impression in the mind, in the heart, and in the body, so that when life comes along, throws a curveball, it's out of your control and you feel weird about it. It doesn't feel good. And you sense that in your mind or in your body. Now you have something to draw from. You already know this. You've already experienced it. You've already conquered it. You're okay. So let's add a practice of inquiry. For those of you who are new and joining us for the first time, practices of inquiry throughout the Satyaseva book and practice are simple questions that you can ask yourself. These are by no means exhaustive. These questions are meant to inspire your own self-inquiry. So, for example, you're doing something with your opposite hand. It could be brushing your teeth. It could be eating. It could be writing. It could be buttoning a garment, zipping up your pants. Whatever it is, just use your other hand and see what happens. And then ask yourself these questions. Do I feel tight? If so, where? When I use my opposite hand for everything I do, I'm right-handed. So when I use my left hand, my right shoulder creeps up, gets really tight, like, I don't like this. Next question. Does anything hurt? Have any emotions appeared that surprise you? What thoughts are arising? What narratives or internal stories are emerging from within? And this is simply the self-inquiry practice is simply this moment to encourage that inner observer in you that enables you to lean back a little bit and simultaneously lean in as you're looking and observing. And wow, would you look at all this? You might notice thoughts like, I have never wanted to finish brushing my teeth so fast in all my life. How much longer is this going to take? Why did Julia tell me to try this? This is ridiculous. I don't want to do this anymore. Fascinating, isn't it? Keep going. Keep looking. Stay open. You might be thinking, what does this have to do with supporting people in recovery? This question is a wonderful indicator of how fixed and narrow the mind can be. We are convinced that recovery and support look only a certain way, always requiring a bright spotlight on only that perspective. Anything that deviates even slightly is not to be trusted. I'll grant you that brushing your teeth with this level of awareness is a monumental departure from the well-worn views of recovery, but that is precisely my intention. I endeavor to guide your journey toward opening to indirect opportunities that allow you to perceive and experience your whole life in a new light. This practice invites you to do the unpredictable, which helps chip away at habit energy, slowly, methodically, playfully. We all have the propensity to become entrenched by the slightest, most ridiculous things. Shifting a simple and inconsequential pattern, like the way we brush our teeth, stirs deliberate yet gentle discomfort and builds confidence and humility to make way for larger and more difficult challenges. Let's take a minute and let's get a little quiet. And I'd like to invite one of the instruments of peace in this practice. These are the tools that we use throughout these mindfulness practices, and they come up repeatedly. And the one for the mindfulness practice of openness that I've been sharing is that's true and not the whole truth. So I'd like for you, and I encourage you to just, in the silence of your own mind and in the spaciousness of your own experience, take in what you've heard today so far. And if something resonates as true, make note of it. Yeah, that feels true. That lands as true. And then invite this inquiry. What else is true? What else is here? One of the things we're endeavoring to do in the cultivation of openness is to unlearn that conditioned thinking that says recovery looks this way. And we've got to stay focused on the habit energy, the specific habit energy. We got to keep that surgeon's glaring light on it at all times. And why we're trying to unlearn that, it's not that that's not true. It is true. It's important to look very carefully at it. That is true. And it's not the whole truth, because the whole of a person, the whole of you and the whole of me, is not defined by my worst habit energy. And recovery systems reduce people to just that one thing. And we forget that there's a whole human being and there's a whole life. And I understand why. It's because when people are really entrenched in their negative habit energy, it becomes their whole life. That is true. And still, it's not the whole truth. Even when active addiction takes over one's life, there are still aspects there that make them whole. There's aspects of joy. There's aspects of kindness. There's aspects of creativity and intelligence. There's aspects of resilience and resourcefulness. There's aspects of immaturity and confusion. All of these things make the whole of a person. And so by cultivating openness, we enable ourselves to see the bigger picture, the whole of someone, the whole of yourself, the whole of your loved one. We are each of us complex human beings. So let's not reduce ourselves or anyone else to a single negative thing. It takes time to unlearn that. And in the process of unlearning that, we have to invigorate and encourage something in its place. And to do that, it's going to get a little awkward. It's going to get a little teetery. We're going to be on a teeter-totter, not really sure which way to go. That's the point. That's okay. Embrace the awkwardness. Know that you can handle it. And how to produce a little bit of stability in the body and in the mind and in the heart is very, very simple. Take a moment now with me and find a posture in the body that feels strong. Even if you're casual, even if you're lying down, find something that feels strong. Maybe flex your legs a little bit. If you're standing and you're moving, stop and maybe make some fists and put your fists on your hips in sort of that Wonder Woman pose, strong pose. Notice even in this posture, you're vulnerable because your chest is fully exposed. All your core organs are exposed, but it doesn't matter. You're strong. If you're sitting down, sit in a way where the spine can be straight. Sit in a way where the body's active. So the spine is straight, the chin is parallel to the floor, the belly is soft. In a seated position, if your knees are crossed or if you're in a lotus position, for full stability, the way to really anchor the body is bring your hands, palms facing down, and cup them around your knees. And breathe. Breathing in, anchoring the body. Being here on the out breath. Breathing in, anchoring the body. Breathing out, being in that stability for anything that might be awkward. Maybe it's an awkward thought. Maybe it's an awkward activity. Maybe it's a judgment you're harboring or an insecurity. Breathe with it. Use the stability of your body to let it in and then breathe it out. friends. Once you have a little stability in your body, the next part of this silent practice is to breathe in openness. Imagine in your mind's eye an open space, whatever that means to you. For me, I live where there's open prairie, and it's just such an impeccable way to access openness. And so I go to my fields and I breathe that in. And on the exhalation, I encourage you to breathe out those qualities and those virtues within you that are your truest nature. Virtues like joy, virtues like kindness, patience, love, compassion, resilience, creativity, and so on. Breathe in openness and breathe out a quality that is arising within you, asking for your attention. Enjoy this moment of reflection. friends. I'd like to bring us a step toward the conclusion of our meditation today by reminding everyone here of the importance of sharing, why it is so important to be in community and to share, which we're going to get to experience soon. And that is because our thoughts cannot be seen. The face, the body is a notorious deceiver. You know, we can look at somebody and we have no idea what they're actually thinking unless they tell us. And what we're left with, basically looking at someone's face, is deciding, telling a story about what we think is going on. And what's fascinating in my own experience in this few minutes of silence that we've had is what came up for me. And yet I know that my image, what you see, may appear peaceful and serene. But it was so fascinating. I was watching myself breathing in, and I was putting myself in the middle of one of my beautiful fields. And as I was breathing out, I just invited the first quality that came forward. And the first quality that came forward was messy practitioner. And I was like, oh, wow, would you look at that? Huh, is that even true? And it is so true. I'm a messy practitioner. So, what else is true? Right? That's the instrument of peace. So, I was breathing in my openness and breathing out scattered, breathing in openness, breathing out. And then I made a little bit of space I didn't want to allow this sort of negative self talk to be in the driver's seat, right? So, I do have some agency. And I decided to invite a different voice. And I was like, okay, well, what else is here? And what came forward when I was breathing in my openness was, I get shit done. And that's true also. And then I was reflecting on this morning when I was met with a boundary from my husband that was pretty formidable, but clear. And it was so fascinating that my first reaction, and I could not have stopped this reaction had my life depended on it, it was so instantaneous, was insecure, doubt, and assuming responsibility. Somehow I did this. It's my fault. But just as quick, because I'm a practitioner, messy and skilled, I was able to see that and go, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with me unless it has something to do with me. And I don't know that right now. So I am here to respect the boundary until I learn a little bit more. And that's how I tame the insecurity. That's how I tame the doubt. I don't make it go away entirely. I can't do that. But I also don't let it govern my life. It's not in the driver's seat. I bring forward a different driver, one that makes space for the doubt, the insecurity, the mess, the scatter, and all of the other qualities that make the whole of me. That is what we can play with and practice in the open space of the mind and heart. Breathing in openness. Breathing out to see the whole of me. Breathing in openness. Breathing out to see the whole of you. This is the practice. We're just going to take this moment to bring forward a couple of summary like thoughts and integrations. One of the things that kept coming up repeatedly is boundaries. And before I forget, there are a couple of resources that I want to share with you. The first is the Satyaseva book. There is a whole chapter on boundaries. Boundaries are so, so important. And in this Sangha, I call boundaries the balaklohe, stone wall. And I really like the idea of these stone walls to bring forward the fluidity that was also brought forward today, meaning that I can build a stone wall that is solid, but it doesn't have to be sky high. It could be just to my ankles, or it can be to my thighs. Or if you're traveling in Ireland, there are stone walls that Lo and I encountered that have stones that stick out, so they serve as a little step, and they will lift you up to the next little paddock or little pasture, where the stone wall on that side is only shin high. So you can be completely flexible in how you build these walls. The whole point of having a boundary is to create a border for your life, to create some kind of symbol that says, this is my life, and my life, my space is sacred. And the only one who can hold and honor the sanctity of my space is me. And if I let anyone into my space that's defiling it in whatever way defilement happens, belittlement, diminishment, berating, lies, distrust, suspicion, so on and so forth, I have an opportunity to examine, how did I let this in? Am I bordered with someone where the boundary's too low? I'm too accessible. Is this a habit energy of mine where I've opened up a gate and I've just allowed all of this noise in? Can I give myself permission to close that gate? Boundaries is a long, long term, complicated practice, but it is such a joyful one. We learn so much about ourselves and each other. If there's one thing I can say about boundaries, it would be this, and that is, if you're interested in cultivating healthy boundaries with someone, it's because you are trying to preserve a relationship with them. If you're building a wall that is sky high, you don't want a relationship with that person. That's the message. You're ending the relationship. If you can't see them, if you don't want to see them, if you want nothing to do with them, and you've got this impenetrable fortress wall going up, it's because you are shifting the relationship in a very big way toward its end. But if you want a relationship with somebody, then a boundary is a place for mutual understanding. And in order to have that, you have to risk being seen, and you have to dare to see someone else. So boundaries take a long time. So the resources I would recommend, one is the Satyaseva book. Two, the Balaklohe book that I haven't finished yet, but it's coming. Three, there's a great book. If you just Google boundaries, I think the second line is where I begin and you end, or something like that. The author is Anne Catherine. It's an excellent, excellent resource. And then the fourth resource is a book that I highly recommend called Beyond Addiction. And there's another tagline, and I think it's something like how mindfulness and kindness help people change. So there's Satyaseva, Boundaries by Anne Catherine, and Beyond Addiction. And those are excellent, excellent resources. Nobody's good at boundaries. Nobody's good at boundaries. It takes a lot of practice. I actually happen to be really good at boundaries, but that's because I practice them all the time. And 5 years ago, I was terrible at them, but I'm very committed to practicing boundaries. And I want to leave you with a couple of things to think about. So, for anybody who works with me, on a professional level, some of the language that I use when I am reminding people that there's a boundary here is I invite you to the wall. That's the preface. I invite you to the wall. And what I'm trying to convey is I have a perspective that I'd like to share with you, but I'm not going to share it with you unless you come to the wall. And the invitation of coming to the wall is I'm inviting you to see me. I want you to see me and I want to see you. And I want to be able to have this mutual exchange. Are you in a place to have this mutual exchange with me? And you don't have to be. You can say, no, I don't want to come to the wall. Now's not a good time for me to come to the wall, Julia. That's an honest response. Okay. So I invite you to come to the wall. That's really good language. The other thing I would encourage, and we've heard some things in sharing today from traditional approaches to recovery that are very cringeworthy. And I will say that without ambiguity. And this is some of the stuff that we're having to unlearn and reimagine. And that's why the Buddhist practices are so incredible because they really do help us unlearn and reimagine what are we actually trying to do. And this taps into one of the aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is wise speech. And for anybody who hasn't heard this before, whenever you are going to convey something or whenever you're going to receive something, pass it through the three gates of wise speech. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it helpful? And the teaching, this particular sutra, the Buddha emphasized the third gate as being the most important. Because we can say truthful things and we can be super kind and it's not helpful. So when we say something that's actually helpful, it usually has elements of kindness and truth to it. And so really when you're hearing something from someone else, if it isn't kind, you do not have to receive that. And that can be something you catch and go, that wasn't kind. I'm not going to receive that. That's my boundary. And you put that on the wall. That's the way to manage the balaklohe. And there are plenty of times where people say things to us and we're like, yeah, I'm not going to take that. That goes on the wall. But here's the trick of openness here. We have to apply this to ourselves. We give ourselves so much permission to be nasty and awful. And it's time that we start to cultivate a little bit of confidence and a healthy boundary around our own sanctity to be able to go, I'm not going to talk to myself like that. It isn't kind. I don't receive that. That's a practice. That's a big practice. And that's what we're here to do. So I'd like to end our practice today with a note of gratitude and thank you all for being here and just really being these dedicated, inspiring resources for me to keep going and keep practicing and keep putting this out there and keep talking about it. And this is such an unusual thing for many women to be in positions of leadership in this way and to have a spiritual voice. And so I really want to thank you for the courtesy of your time and your presence to hear me and the feedback you give me in ways that it's helpful, in ways that it's challenging. It is such an enormous inspiration to me as a practitioner, and by extension to all the people in my life who are struggling, who benefit from my practice because of you. So I'd like to invite us to come back to a noble posture so that we can make a dedication. And I'd like to invite you to play in your mind, see a wide open space and see it delineated in various kinds of borders and shapes. If you're into symmetry, you'll see all of these little frameworks, this little patchwork areas. It's almost like a bird's eye view when you fly in an airplane and you go over that part of the United States or anywhere in the world that's full of agriculture. You see all of these areas of different things that are being grown, different fenced off areas for pasture and so forth. So imagine that. And imagine that you are framed with all of these people. You have boundaries with all these different people. And so each of those boundaries, you meet that person where they are, and your boundary is in accordance to that. It reflects it. So some boundaries are really low, some boundaries are really high, some boundaries have lots of windows, some have none. Some are just a string, some are 5 stones thick. But in all of those boundaries, there's an open space, your life, to see the whole of yourself as you interact with all of these situations, all of these people, and all of your own personal arisings. And I'll spare you the suspense. In the sanctity of your own space, you will encounter yourself skillfully and unskillfully. You will encounter yourself messy and tidy, scattered and organized, light and dark, stormy and full of ease. All of these pairs of opposites coming together, defining the whole of you in the safety and sanctity of your precious human life. You are the creator of this space. It is why you are here. And by extension, you offer all of that wisdom, all of that experimentation and knowing out into the world so that it can inspire others with beauty and joy and wonder, with awkwardness and wobbliness, with fun and with serious regard. This precious human life of yours, may you live it fully. And may you remember that with the gaze of the divine, you have never been, nor shall you ever be, a mistake. You belong here because you are here. It is as simple and as profound as that. Thank you, friends. Namaste.